Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. If the government wants or needs more housing built, where can they put it? Well, they could develop farmland. We've got plenty of that, and it just sits there all year long with plants growing on it, and farm animals just walking around, looking around. Besides, who needs farmland when we can produce all the food we need in a Petri dish? Or if Canada's the 51st state by the time this episode is released, Petri dish. We might lose those beautiful sunsets over a flowing field of wheat, but there's always a trip to Saskatchewan. I've never been there. Another option to help address the housing problem is infill development. Simply put, filling in areas of the city that are underutilized with new housing units. Think basement apartment, backyard suite, townhouse projects, that sort of thing. Today we are joined by Emma Cubitt to get an architect's viewpoint on infill development, ways to address the housing crisis, NIMBYism versus INVIZIJM. Municipalities have been modifying zoning bylaws and reducing or eliminating development charges to promote more development inside the city boundary without taking over highly valuable farmland. We'll also get Emma's tips for your development project if you are looking to do so. You can check out Emma's company, INVIZIJ Architects, INVIZIJ.ca. And bonus, if you are in the Hamilton area, click the link in the show notes to join the Facebook group called Laneway Suites and ADUs in Hamilton. There's a large active community in this space. And if you are looking to get answers on what you can and can't do with your property, we are offering a free 30-minute expert consultation. Just go to goodstewards.ca/discover to learn more. To get in touch, email us at hello@twostewards.ca. Remember, this show is not financial advice, but it is valuable for listening amusement purposes. And now, Emma Cubitt.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. My name is Mark, and I'm here with Brent. Morning, Brent.
Good morning, Mark.
How are you today, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. We're talking to Emma just now about traveling and going to the beach, and it sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, I was just away near Ellicottville, and that was not like the beach.
No beach.
There was a lot of snow, and it was cold. But if you like that kind of thing, it's good. So, but we're not here to talk about travel. We're here with Emma Cubitt, and Emma is the principal at INVIZIJ Architecture. And so there's a lot of interesting things we want to talk about today. One of them will be, I think, laneway suites or ADUs, but also architecture, stewardship, all that kind of thing. So welcome, Emma.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you. So maybe you can give us a quick lowdown on, how did you get where you are now, and what do you enjoy about it?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in the States outside of Chicago and always had a interest in architecture from really young age. So things like drawing floor plans when I was, just a kid, and my parents were looking for a new house for a long time. So I used to study all the floor plans. And so I knew that was the path that I wanted to pursue after school, and went to University of Illinois to study architecture. But then after that, I had architecture school is a very challenging thing to study, and they push you really hard. So I hit a bit of burnout and looked to do something completely different for a while, and ended up being a missionary through the Lutheran Church in the UK.
Okay. Oh, wow.
A bit of a pivot.
Yeah. And I was going to go anywhere, but I got placed in the UK, which was convenient because they speak English.
So wait, so you signed up for architecture program, and how many years did you went
so
to
I did 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I lived in France for a year too, which was amazing. Yeah. And but then after that, I just had to do something different. I was looking at Peace Corps missions, and ended up going to UK to work for this kind of youngish charity called Christians Against Poverty, which some may know is now in Hamilton. And but at the time there was just 25 staff, and now it's probably 20 times that. But I got to do something completely different, which was learning about importance of being light with your finances, like
this is personal finances.
Personal finances,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Not related to architecture
not
at all.
at all.
Yeah. Not like budgeting for a development project or something.
But I had no experience in this growing up. We never talked about money really with my family. And so that was a completely different thing, which kind of showed me like, personal finances, but also like the importance of budgeting in the work you do, which also ties into like running a firm later on. So that was that. When I was there, I met my husband, Graham, who was also living we're up in Yorkshire in Leeds and Bradford. So that's where we met. Then we fell in love. And then he ended up bringing me back to Ontario when we.
I was going to say you're talking about Chicago, and then you're talking about France and England. Yeah. And then you had to come here for some reason.
Hamilton. Yeah. So I've been in Hamilton now for 20 years since we moved here.
And you like it?
Yeah.
Well, when you think of all the international hotspots, I mean, London, Paris, New York,
most
Hamilton.
Point
this is where Mark lives. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
International man of mystery.
Yeah. Hamilton has always drawn me because it's gritty. It's got so much potential.
A lot of character.
Yeah. And so much potential to do good, which is kind of what has always been an interest to me. Like Chicago is a very beautiful city. Of course, it has problems too, but I feel like I can be of more use in Hamilton.
In terms of like improving the city, improving the architecture.
Better.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's.
I mean, it can only get better, right?
Yeah.
So you started at some point. An architecture firm? Like how did that happen?
So
did you wake up one day and
I moved to Hamilton, finished up my architecture studies at Waterloo, and then as soon as I graduated from that, I started working for my firm, which I still am at today. So that was 2008, and at the time it was called Garwood Jones and Hannum, and now we changed our name to INVIZIJ. But over the years, I got licensed as an architect, started to take on more leadership, and then in 2009 I ended up taking over the firm.
So what
like was it a hostile takeover? Like
basically
you're running through the halls with a cutlass? And
not 2019 if I said that right.
Okay,
retirements and such, and just transitioning of leadership.
What sort of projects do you guys do? Is it a big wide range, or like what's your focus?
Big wide range, but the kind of the particular passion that I brought into the firm was affordable housing. So that's probably 2/3 of the work that we do right now. And other than that, though, and those are mostly larger buildings, like apartment buildings, ranging from like 12 to 100 or 150 units.
And so who would the clients be in that sort of situation? It's
almost all nonprofits.
Okay.
Or charities.
So that's really a niche then, like.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
And that's definitely like the kind of the passion of my whole team now. There's I think 17 of us right now, and that's definitely a focus and passion of what we do. But also we design arenas, libraries, rec centers. We did the courthouse renovations and a little bit of work on schools and hospitals, churches, working with a few churches right now. So
are a lot of these projects like restoration kind of modification jobs, or a lot of new build?
Half and half.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting the sense that you like to take things that are kind of run
broken.
down and broken, and make them good. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the theme of me. Yeah, in a nutshell. So
I guess when it comes to housing, and then also people and nonprofits,
exactly, it really ties together. So I think especially for the nonprofits that we work with, often the buildings are in really poor condition, and often they had just a sordid past, like a lot of bars and rooming houses, strip clubs, and the like that were pretty nasty, and like a blight for the community. And then often the civic leaders would come to Indwell or another client and say, can you help us with this? We want to turn this building around. And that's what we love to do. So I think we've probably converted I think probably 4 or 5 different bars and rooming houses now. And
so walk us through one of those projects. Like you get this project. So let's take the example of Indwell as a client. We had Jeff Nevin on a little while ago, so listeners can go back and listen to that, learn a little bit about what Indwell does. But so you would actually be the boots on the ground guys going in and looking through the building, taking measurements, and then what?
Yeah, so normally they're pretty scary at the start of these buildings, often a lot of mold. So now we'll have a study done ahead of time to see if it's actually safe to go in the building. Often we're going in with these big hazmat suits and stuff, and trying to just judge the potential with our structural engineer to make sure it's actually going to be safe, or if there's going to have to be like significant structural work done. So far, all the projects have been like redeemable, like the existing building.
Figure out what can you salvage, and
and then with our clients, we'll talk about like, this part of the building we should definitely keep because of the heritage, integrity of the heritage portions of it, or just what works with the program of what they're hoping to put on that building. Talking with the municipality to make sure that the zoning and parking ratios and all that kind of stuff is actually, going to work for them, and then putting together the full drawing set.
And getting a permit.
Yep. And those projects normally take, like, from initially seeing the site to getting to permit stage, between a year or 2.
Wow.
Yeah. Unless there's contamination in the soil, which there often is, then that takes longer.
You don't have one of those red tape cutting scissors that you just go through and...
Yeah. It is too bad, because for most of those sites that have some kind of contamination, often it didn't even come from that site. It's from like a dry cleaner or something that was down the street. So there's nothing you can do about it. And then we'll dig up some of the soil, put down these under slab like ventilation things, maybe a little fan.
That's the technical term.
That's what
Mark, I think we can work with her.
Yeah.
Thingy. All right.
That's all we do. And that's for every project. Like, okay, we're going to do this, and then, we'll test it throughout the future years. But
so I'm curious about that, because my church has been looking for a home for a while, and one of the sites that really, like, it's a great location, but it's a dry cleaner, and we passed on it because we're like, the liability, right? Like, we don't know.
Yeah. If you're not doing housing, it's a lot easier to use those sites. But you still, like, the other barrier is getting a mortgage. And so often banks won't fund projects that don't have this record of site, and you can't get that without going through just time.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it would, would we be liable? That was a question for pollution, like all over the neighborhood, because in a residential neighborhood, right? If it's leaked all over the place, who's liable, right?
I've never come across where the actual original site is responsible for anything, but interesting. But yeah, it's just one of those things. What are, I don't know, have attitudes changed at all on the municipal level with for affordable housing? Have they been pushing for this for a long time, or are they starting to realize, like, we really need this more? Definitely know that they need it, and they hear that it's like the main thing that politicians talk about, every chance they get, because it's such a dire need in our community. So yeah, like the municipalities that we work with, they've been like helpful at moving through the process faster, making these projects priority, and still takes a while. There's still some bumps along the road, but overall, they're trying to partner with us.
You're not wanting to cut corners and like kind of rush it through, but they are being very receptive.
We still have to go through site plan approval and those kinds of steps, but they do make it as painless as they can. The other big player in all these projects, the bigger ones, is CMHC, which is the like providing the majority of the funding, mostly in grants, sometimes in loans for these projects. And there's like a conglomeration of funding that they need to put together for each of these projects. That's not my specialty, but they require like us to be very far through a project. Like we call it a Class B cost estimate, which is basically permit ready before they'll start to give any commitments to funding, which is really hard for these organizations.
Right.
Well, because presumably you don't work for free, at least not in the long run.
Yeah.
So there's a significant amount that they're putting out just to see if they could actually get the funding.
Yeah, and that's not just us. That's like buying the land, going through all the municipal approvals that you have to get to for that stage, which, is still costly, plus all the different consultants.
Yeah. So it's risky. I mean, you're used to that if you're a private developer and you're gonna, do something for a profit. That's the risk you run, right? You risk your capital, but when you're doing it for affordable housing, that's it's a little bit tougher. I don't know. Is there a better way to do this, do you think? Or do you think the initiative has to come from private
Well, there's definitely
people?
some places that do this better. And I think one place that we should look to...
Costa Rica?
Finland.
Finland, oh.
Yeah. So there they have very high levels of like government-based housing. 20% of their housing base is actually like social housing.
So when you say government-based, like the cost is covered by government or
a portion of it?
Portion,
yeah.
Okay.
And they have, it's not a government organization, but it's a separate nonprofit that works very closely with the government to build all this housing. So they'll, we're here, so they have 20%, we have 3%. So just a huge difference in the amount of housing stock that's going towards the nonprofit, I guess.
Yeah.
I seem to recall something about like Finland solved homelessness or something like that. One of those kind of catchy headings. I didn't investigate further, but
they have.
So essentially,
I think if we could follow their lead on how they've like organized themselves, instead of putting all the onus on these charities to, cover $1 million in costs before they can get any insurance of their projects, if there was, just a different way of being organized.
When we had Jeff on, Jeff Nevin, he mentioned it's not so much that we're in a housing crisis with like the number of units being the problem. It's more an affordability crisis where the price of the unit is too high, like the entry level unit.
Yeah.
Is that like, do you have the same kind of opinion on that?
I would say yes, but also that we do have a supply problem too. I think we need to just build more in general. Like the supply numbers are down, but also the costs, and that's tied to.
Are there creative ways to make houses cheaper though?
Well, yes, there are.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
Well, Brent,
these are secrets, folks. How do you make a house cheaper?
Yeah,
that's kind of a.
So it depends on the scale of housing that you're looking for, and with the larger scale projects that we've just been talking about, it's harder because we are trying to meet many different goals in terms of accessibility and energy performance and these kind of other civic goals, which I think are super important. And that's why those projects do cost more per unit. One alternate, there's many different like lower cost variations of that. That also works well when there's like it's more expensive land.
Right.
But when another like kind of opposite end of the spectrum, the most cost-effective way to build affordable housing is in people's backyards, or actually, I take that back. Actually, in people's basements, and
is the most
cost-effective, and the second most is in people's backyards, because that way, like for the apartment buildings that we're designing, in the end, if you're including land costs and everything, it'll be kind of in the $400,000 a unit range. Whereas for the
there's not really a way to make it that much cheaper.
Not a lot. Like if you're doing lower density and the land's cheaper, then definitely you can. But in these urban projects, not really.
No,
yeah.
Usually it's an urban core, right? And land just costs more. You're not going to build a single family home on that piece of land for sure.
Like most of the projects that we work on for these bigger ones, they're like proximity to transit and the other like supports and services of a community is really important. So that kind of plays into the cost factor.
Yeah.
We're in a more rural community. We could definitely build them for less, but then there wouldn't be the connection to services and stuff the same.
So in people's basements is where you're going to find the answer.
Yeah.
or the backyard. Okay.
Yeah. So basement apartments, you would also know, but I would say that you can, depending on if you're needing to do any digging down and bring services and stuff down there, it could range from like as little as $25,000. Yeah. Graham and I converted our basement like maybe 5 years ago. We had to underpin because we're an old basement in the downtown.
Yeah.
But still, we actually have a very small house too. So
you underpin, does that mean you lowered the floor and made the ceiling
floor
height bigger?
like 2 feet? Yeah.
Wow.
But still, it only costs like $80,000 for the whole project to make this basement apartment. Not bad.
1 bedroom?
It's like a big studio. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But still, $80,000 is pretty great for the cost of a home for someone, right?
Yeah.
And
compared to $400,000.
Compared to $400,000.
Yeah.
And then the other option is to build in your backyard or in a garage or something that's being underused, and those will range somewhere in the middle there. So some of the projects that we've worked on with INVIZIJ have been in the like $175,000 range, where they're using some donations and stuff too.
Okay, so a lot to talk about.
Yep.
You mentioned INVIZIJ, but before we get there, like if somebody's going to build something in their backyard or in their basement, there's going to be some sacrifice. Like you guys, I'm assuming you had your basement before you built this unit, and then you had storage, or like maybe the ceiling height wasn't as big, but you still use the space.
Yeah, there's laundry down there.
So so what was that like going from from having this space to not having it, and then having someone in your unit or in your basement living there
in our home? Yeah,
like that. Almost, I think a lot of people are like, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah. So Graham and I have kind of lived our lives together with sharing lots of things. So like the move to sharing part of your house was not a problem for us, but and there actually have been more benefits to us by having we have Nev who lives downstairs now. For one, we got to improve our like HVAC because originally we had an old furnace and it was loud and it was not very efficient. So we took that out as part of the project, put in a heat pump and a small boiler to do the hot water heating. And so we saved a lot of space down there. It's a lot quieter and a lot more efficient and cost effective.
So that's one thing I'm worried about, making improvements to the podcast. Because I'm pretty loud and not very efficient, and I'm just worried that one day Brent's going to find a new podcast partner and help me out.
So we did that.
I can attest to that. Yes.
We also, so I don't know if my story was unique, but I was getting sick from our basement because there was like mildew. Because it was a 100-year-old basement.
Yeah.
It was like concrete floor but very thin, and concrete walls but very like
porous.
Yeah. And so there just wasn't any damp proofing. So I was like always kind of feeling like I was getting a cold, and it was annoying, and I was always taking oil of oregano trying to like fight this pending cold. But once we like properly damp proofed and dug it down and insulated the basement, then my sickness went away. So
Wow.
I am so thankful.
That's priceless.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody
And then-
should put a basement apartment in.
Yeah.
It'll just improve your health.
Yeah. And then we ended up taking out the stairs down to the basement because we had an exterior one instead. And so where that stairs went down, we used that space to put a washer dryers. Now it's like on the ground floor. So
Yeah.
life is
Ground
better.
floor laundry. That's, yeah.
So life is better. And Nev, like we can hear her like, you know, coming and going, and that's just fine. We share life with her sometimes, but she, you know, does all her own things too. Our dog, her name is Flora. She loves it when Nev comes home. And so we just like share life a little
Yeah.
bit, but it's actually made everything better.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a different lifestyle. I think more reminiscent of Europe or whatever. I don't know. Maybe you're familiar with that from your time in France. And
Yeah. Yeah. It's just you're closer together, but, you know, it's okay. Wouldn't change it.
yeah,
So, okay, so that's a basement.
Yeah. Oh, plus we get rent. So.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
All these benefits. What about the
Yeah.
monetary
Plus
one?
Health
she
benefits.
pays us to live there. So, yeah, it's a win-win.
it's
really.
not a non-for-profit. All
Yeah,
right.
and we're living out our values of providing affordable places for people to live. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a tangible way.
yeah.
So, I mean, your main gig is doing these bigger projects
Hmm.
because, you know, if you've got a company to run, that's what pays the bills, right?
Yeah, and my like life goal is to build like 10,000 units of affordable housing.
Okay.
You can say that louder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
10,000 units of affordable housing. So we're
How far are you?
we are about a fifth of the way there so far.
Okay. All right.
A lot of life left to
2,000.
live.
Yeah, that's right.
But you are involved as well with the sort of in my backyard movement.
Yeah.
I guess right now is that sort of in a official capacity with INVIZIJ, or is that just sort of Emma Cubitt doing stuff?
Combination.
Okay.
So my when I was at Waterloo, my master's thesis was on the potential for laneway houses in Hamilton, basically.
Oh, okay.
And so that was 2008. And
Oh, wow.
Was there any potential at that point, or
totally, yeah, but there was no zoning for it. So I used that to have meetings with the planning department to say, like, look at all this unused potential in these people's backyards. And at the time, Vancouver was they had just created a zoning and they were just starting to do those developments there. So a lot of it was looking at Vancouver and all different places in North America and a little bit of Europe to say, like, this is I was trying to say, like, if we put these different criteria together for ADUs, that this will really take off. Took a while. Took 10 years of meetings, politics, and then
persistence
you know,
pays off?
persistence, and then it happened. Yeah.
Okay, so what happened?
Province
well,
happened.
The province happened?
I
Well,
don't
but it was
know. Was
before
that-
the province. So
Okay,
Hamilton
okay.
was about a year or two before the province mandated it. So that's good. So actually, I think the province looked at Hamilton and places like that had already put this in motion. And in Hamilton, I think it was 2018, they first started by allowing just lots that were like adjacent to laneways, so that
Okay.
so that you could access from the back and the front. And then a year and a half later, so then they allowed, and that was only in certain neighborhoods. It was like a pilot. And then a little bit later, they allowed basically all lots, and that you didn't have to have a laneway.
So where are we now with the legislation? Like, you talk about Hamilton specifically. Like, what does Hamilton allow? Is it just
Yeah, Hamilton allows ADUs on pretty much any lot. One of the main criteria is that you have to be able to have a meter wide access from the road to the backyard. So that'll limit some properties that don't have that. You can't, if you're sharing that egress with your next door neighbor, you can get an agreement with them, but not all neighbors want to do that.
right? Yeah.
So that's a criteria. you need to have a certain amount of area in your backyard so that you can have the required setbacks. But that, besides like new developments on the mountain that have really small backyards, in most cases that's achievable. So most properties could fit this. Yeah.
And how many units on a property?
So now, as of right, you can have 3. So there'd be like the main house dwelling, an ADU within the house, often a basement apartment, but it could be a garage conversion, and then something in the back or side yard.
So that would be, so you say within the house, so that would be like an attached garage?
Attached, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, so basically 2 units that are attached and
Yeah.
then 1 separate building.
Yeah.
Could you have 1 unit in the house and 2 in an ADU?
I don't
As
think
of right?
so. I think you'd have to get a variance for that.
Yeah,
but
okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think a lot of people who live in these neighborhoods are talking about is, well, okay, if you're going to allow all of a sudden all these units to pop up in everyone's backyards, like that's going to impact parking, that's going to impact, traffic in my neighborhood and
Sewer capacity.
Yeah, sewer capacity. There's probably some joke about that or something. Water, like any existing infrastructure, when go back however many years when these subdivisions were developed and designed, they were designed to handle, a certain number of families or whatever. And now we're all of a sudden, tripling. I guess you're saying go from 1 to 3, maybe 4
households. Yeah.
Yeah, 3. I mean, it might not be the same size units and size families, but can we do this?
Yeah.
Is this a good idea?
Yes,
okay.
we can. So
you got a positive attitude.
Yeah. Okay. I'm an eternal optimist, but so the city has looked at that, that they do their due diligence, but they have allowed for this in the zoning now, as of right, pretty much everywhere. And the reason I would say for the increased density in the number of units is that at the same time, the number of people in each household has kind of conversely decreased. So where a lot of these houses may have had 6 or 8 people living in them, now they've got 2 or 3 or 4. And then often in the ADUs, they're intended for smaller households too. 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 people. So the number of people, pretty similar. And then the services, they're also being upgraded, like they have to after 100 years, and depending on your neighborhood. Yeah. So in most cases, we have to do a service increase on the property for the water line. And sewers are normally fine. Hydro, sometimes, you're getting an upgrade for that. And parking is the other big one.
Yeah.
Are we living in a world where everybody doesn't need a car and can take public transit everywhere?
Yeah.
Uber?
So depending on where we're talking about, in Hamilton, we are a city which does have all the amenities that you need without needing to have a car, depending on your life situation. So I think the intent for this new bylaw, which doesn't require parking, is that the goal is to create places for people to live in their community where they wouldn't be required to have a car. So that's, and often where people can't afford to have a car. So that's why there's no requirement for parking. However, there's always the encouragement to provide parking space because many people still do. So there's, I think if it's possible to provide parking for the ADU, then yes, do it.
Right.
But you don't have to, because they didn't want to limit the main goal, which is providing homes for people, not places for people to park cars.
So the old rule was you had to have a certain amount of parking spaces per, is it per unit or per square foot of house?
Yeah,
or
per
living
unit. Yeah.
Yeah. And they just said, okay, no more parking requirements at all?
Yeah, so the city at Hamilton just redid their whole parking bylaw, so that's changed quite a bit, depending on where you are in the city. But for ADUs specifically, right now there's no requirement for parking, just so that they can incentivize people to get these built without having to go through like a public process.
Yeah.
So currently, the way the bylaw is here and in most municipalities is that you can go straight to building permit as of right. You don't need to go through minor variances and stuff unless you want to change things from the bylaw. So you don't have to get permission from your neighbors. And I think that has really helped to take away some of those pain points between neighbors, because once they have a new, like for example, in my situation with my basement apartment, we only have like one parking spot. That's it. There's no way to provide more because we've got a small lot. So we have a car. Neb downstairs doesn't. Like, I don't want to talk about her financial situation, but she just wouldn't be able to afford it. So it works out, just fine for us. And I think there's many other situations like that. So the goal is to create housing first, right?
Not parking lots.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's create housing and not just giant parking lots.
Yeah.
It's like Joni Mitchell said, right? They paved paradise and put up a parking lot.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Our younger listeners won't get that. Talk about NIMBYism, right?
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of online chats about, people are gonna, especially about ADUs, right? Oh, they're gonna add ADUs, and it's gonna, there's all kinds of reasons. You talk about the whole as of right versus doing a variance where the neighbors have input, and the neighbors always have input, right? When it's in their neighborhood. And there's all these reasons like, the sewer lines can't handle the capacity, the parking, that. But I think at the heart of it is they just don't want more people in their neighborhood.
Yeah, or
it's
change,
not really
right?
legitimate. Like they're worried about the sewer. Like whoever thinks about the sewer infrastructure, right? The capacity of the sanitary line.
Yeah, it's like, I wonder if this is actually going to...
But nobody thinks about that ahead of time.
No.
Really, it's just like, I don't want any change in my neighbor. Like, do you think that's accurate? Or am I just...
I do, yeah. So, like ADUs are... not the solution, but part of the solution to this need that we have for a growing number of dwellings for people, especially of smaller household sizes. And I would also say, especially for people who want to be able to age in place in their neighborhood. So we can talk about like who's moving into these units, but often they're family members and such. So, but we don't want to, like the other option is to either build more developments in farmland or to build more large condos, which isn't more cost effective. And it's also maybe not the right fit for a lot of the people who are choosing to want to live in these ADUs.
Yeah, well, it's a whole different experience, right? As like living in a building where you have like a foyer and you go in versus having like some green space and a window that you can look out into a backyard and so forth. And yeah, I mean, one of the things that irks me too is people will say, well, we have this aging population of these boomers who are so selfish because they're living in these 2,000 or 3,000 square foot homes and
by themselves.
But they've nowhere to
by
go.
themselves.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, number one, this is just me, but the government has no business telling people where and how they should live. I don't think, right? There's regulations and like, I get that, safety and so forth. But, if my mother wants to live in the home that she raised her family in and lived life in, and she wants to stay there in her golden years, like that's her business. That's just a little side rant. This is why our podcasts go long typically. But having an ADU or something, or adding a basement, like if she's not going to go in the basement, maybe we can add an apartment or an ADU in the back where caregivers can live or something like that's seems like a pretty cool alternative.
100%. Yeah. So I think so far we've designed, I think around 8 ADUs, and half of them built and half are like just going through the approvals and stuff. But, and many of them have been built for parents to be able to live with their grown kids.
Yeah.
So, and those that have moved in so far, like, are thriving. So, because there's the added benefits of like childcare, you know, between the generations, and just having that like daily connection. One project I can think of in particular, her parents had lived kind of out in the country in a big house, and they were getting older though. So just by having that like daily interaction with the family has been a huge part of, you know, like unknown benefits.
Yeah.
So, and that is
it's hard to put a price on that too, right?
No, yeah. And alternatively, I've seen parents that have kids who are, you know, kind of getting out of university age who can't afford to rent or buy something in the market. So they're looking at building these ADUs so that they can have a place to live, and, you know, maybe they'll rent it out to someone else in the future, but at least they'll have a good place now, which is not right in the house.
I think another thing, Mark, though, is people might not be thinking about the sewer, but they're thinking about density. I think the other concern is property values, right? Like, I own this piece of land, and that guy just put this big thing up in the backyard of his property right over my fence, and, you know, that's going to make my property value decrease. Like, is that true, or?
Yeah. So it's too soon to tell, because there haven't been really studies about how much ADUs are improving the overall values of a neighborhood, but it's investment in that neighborhood. So I would think that the overall value of that property is increasing, and therefore that's kind of impacting positively all the neighbors too. The more density you have in a neighborhood, in most cases. So.
Yeah. I mean, so for an investor, like that place is worth way more to me, right?
Yeah.
If it's got 3 or 4 units in it, as opposed to the single family home. So
I guess it's more the
homeowners,
the neighbor of the unit. Like,
no, I know, but I'm just saying, like, you would think there would be a lift, at least from the investments,
from the surrounding property.
Investment point of view. Maybe not the homeowners. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think if, you know, some people want to be an island on their own and have like no connection at all with any of their neighbors, probably living in the city is not the best
Greenland
place for you.
Well, I mean,
Iceland.
there's a cultural component there as well, right? I was just having this conversation the other day about the idea of the nuclear family and how that's, you know, really a relatively new development in North America, where, you know, you know, typical stages you go through, you grow up, finish school, or do whatever, get into a trade, and then you get married, and you move to your own place, and you have your kids and your family there, and your own little, or your own big house in a neighborhood somewhere. But like, for a long time, that's not how we've done it, and that's not how it's done in many places around the world either, where you have extended family, and you just, like, you live with them, whether it's like one big house or a village or whatever, right? And we're kind of seeing, I don't know if we're being forced back to a return to that kind of idea, where what you're talking about, right, is, you don't leave your parents, you just stay with them, or maybe they come back after a while. And like, I think that's really cool, and it's beautiful when you can have family together, and not like we're talking about even like single folks, right? Like, you're 21, time to get out of my house, and so, okay, I guess I'll go live by myself in an apartment somewhere. Like, how is that good for society, right? As opposed to actually having a little bit of community, whether it's your family or friends or whatever, right?
I think that's really important what you're talking about, and a big reason why I've always had this interest in ADUs is because it's not just providing housing stock, but often it's that relationship component that comes with being kind of closer to people's spaces. So
we just don't have the current infrastructure for that kind of lifestyle, right? We have all these individual boxes down the street, and there's no each one costs $800,000. Like, you know, hey, 21-year-old, go buy the one right beside us. Like, not happening, right?
No.
So
there is just so much untapped potential in the properties in cities currently. Like one of my first projects was an ADU in the backyard of a rental property that we have in the neighborhood. So there's 2 other units in the main house, and then but it was like a double wide lot. So we bought it with knowing that there was this potential. It's when I was working on my thesis back in the day. So now in the backyard, there's a ADU with family of 4 in there.
Wow.
And they love it. They said they never want to move. So that's pretty nice, hey?
Yeah.
They live right in the Lock Street neighborhood.
Wow.
Just love it.
So are there examples of infill development that you don't like? You really kind of flip it around, like very pro development or pro these sorts of concepts, but
I would say yes. So
Okay.
and then
you could just pull up pictures of all the projects that you've drove past that you don't like. Like,
as a designer,
just
I
name
gotta
them.
say it comes down to design, and the main things that we need to be cognizant of is scale, privacy, like
what do you mean by scale?
shadowing.
Like just
So you are allowed as of right to build like a certain maybe a 3-story house that's like 50 feet long
in your backyard.
or not in your backyard,
Yeah,
but if
yeah.
for like a new infill house, right?
Right, yeah.
So some developers do that, but I don't think that's very like considerate of how that's going to impact the neighbors. Just because you can,
Yeah.
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you should. And maybe you could have done that same development, like, but had a separate building in the back, and then the main house had been smaller, and it wouldn't feel like that big wall for the neighbor.
Yeah, this big giant thing when you get like bungalow,
Yeah.
huge, massive house,
Yeah.
bungalow.
Yeah. And, over time, those bungalows will probably, more of them will convert to large, and it won't be as weird too. So I understand why like the maximums are there, but I think just considering like the character of the neighborhood and having that be, something that's driving the design, not just like making as big a box as you can.
That drives me nuts. Like new developments for a long time, right? It's these McMansions.
Yeah.
Like the design is terrible because there's no discernible design. But then it's also like you got 5 feet of lot on either side and a tiny little backyard, but like 4,000 square feet of house. It's like,
Yeah.
and it just means like, what does that drive you to do? Stay inside. You pull, you come home after work, pull into your garage, close the garage door, and you like never see the neighbors. There's no porches. There may be a deck in the back, but you got a big fence. You don't ever have to see the neighbors either. So that's just my
So both
rant on that.
neighborhoods or existing older neighborhoods are different like that. Like there was the front porch often, and just a different idea of how you live in your space, and that should be reflected in the infill as well.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we're on the same page. I don't know, Mark, you built an outdoor shower even, right? You've taken it to the whole next level. Every time we talk to him, he's like, I'm working on my outdoor kitchen, my outdoor shower. I'm like, you just want to have this.
That's anti-privacy.
Yeah.
And we got good fence. But,
Yeah.
well, I mean, there is this
You
concept
need an
of,
architect.
I probably should have, but too late for that now. No, but I mean, it's interesting. Like on our street, right? We have 4 kids, so they'll be out playing and doing stuff. And then we're seeing, if there's not many kids on our street, and the ones like we're trying to encourage them, like get out and do stuff, right? But typically kids they're like indoor cats now, right? A lot of them. It's like, no, get outside and like don't come back till the sun comes down kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but how do you encourage that kind of neighborhood too, right? So we built like a bigger front porch so that we could sit out on it and just like harass the neighbors or whatever, right?
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
But I don't know, the idea of community living is really lost.
Well, do you actually see
this?
this trend changing? Like, you did your master's thesis, you kind of went through, you've done your own projects, and now you say you've done a few designs like ADUs. Like, are more of these things getting built? But one thing we didn't talk about was this Facebook group that you're.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. Yeah, and actually, the other thing I want to just mention about community is that people really crave it. And
whether
I think,
they say it or not.
Yeah. And one really special, unique thing we've been part of in our neighborhood is for, I think, the past 17 years, 17, we've had weekly potlucks with our neighbors.
Wow.
Yeah, on Friday nights. And it kind of moves around to different houses depending on like the time of year and if it's indoors, outdoors. And the people have changed a bit over time, but there's kind of been the consistent group. And then we normally have like 20 people of like adults and kids, all different ages. Yeah.
Every week?
Every week.
Wow.
It's my Hamilton family, you know, like we, so special. And some people, like we kind of started, we were connected to one church, but now it's some, you know, different churches and no church. And, but we just, you know, love each other and share food together.
Yeah.
And that's really special on our little street. Hunter Street.
We used to do a Canada Day brunch. And we should probably start doing that again. It kind of fell off, but it was kind of cool. You get the neighbors out and yeah. Interesting.
So are you seeing more of these built?
Yes.
I forget about that.
Yeah. So there is a exponential trajectory right now. I think the first year of the zoning, there was like 2 that were built because it had just come out. And then there was like 15. And now I think I last saw there was around 50.
Wow.
Like applications in or active?
Like early permits issued.
Yeah, okay.
And so they're happening, which is great.
So
and I think it'll just keep increasing. There are other market pressures that are going to affect whether people decide to do that now or wait for mortgage rates to come further down.
Because that's my other question is how are they actually financing these? Are they worth it to build?
Yeah. So we can talk about that. So that's talking about the detached ADUs, like in people's backyards. But the attached ones have also been exponentially increasing. I think there is like at least 500 in the past. Oh gosh, I should have my numbers on me.
It's okay. We'll send people.
We won't hold it to you.
We'll send people over to the Facebook group.
Okay. Yeah. Not too long ago, I posted the most recent numbers from the city on that. So it's also been increasing significantly, and it's more like I think around a third of the city's development has been one form of ADU.
Wow.
And this is all like private money, essentially, right? Like private citizens.
Yeah. Becoming their own developer. So you're dispersing that wealth. I'd use that word lightly. Because it's not like going to be a huge investment. It's a long-term investment, right? But still, it's wealth. You're not just giving it to, the few developers that exist otherwise. And I think that's an important part of it too.
Well, yeah, could we talk about the housing crisis, right? And like the government has to build more houses. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not very much for the government doing anything. Because they don't do it well, I don't think. But, affordable housing aside. But
we couldn't do the affordable housing without the government.
And there's a spot for that. But, in general, we need more housing. We need more housing. And that should lead to more affordable housing as well, right? If there's not a squeeze, but this is a perfect way to do it. Just like this is one thing government can do is cut regulations, and not make it a Wild West or a free for all, but let's just make room for people to actually do stuff and then see what happens.
Yeah.
And we're kind of seeing that with the ADUs, right?
Yeah, the one huge incentive that they provide. I think this is in every municipality because they need to, is waiving development charges.
Yeah.
So depending on your municipality and the size of the unit, that could range from here it's ranges from 30,000 to could be 100 in some places to build a unit just to pay for those development charges. But those are waived almost entirely. You just need to pay a little bit for education DCs.
Yeah, which, that's another conversation, right? What happens with these development charges? And I thought I heard the city of Toronto is sitting on billions of dollars in development
Yeah.
money that they just haven't done anything with. I'm like,
Yeah, it's supposed to go to infrastructure and stuff.
yeah,
but,
what are you guys
yeah.
doing? There's flooding all the time, and it's, like, okay, well, let's put two and two together.
Yeah.
You have money, there's flooding. Could you do something with that? I don't know.
But it is a huge incentive right now, and
Yeah.
it may not exist forever. I can't imagine not,
Yeah.
that they wouldn't want to take some of that money back into their hands. So it is a good time to do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of the other programs that are out there?
Yeah, if you have any ideas for people, like if somebody's actually looking to take a first step and do something in their backyard or their basement, like are there incentives or like other than development charges being waived?
Yeah.
What?
We heard there was some federal announcement, but I don't know if that actually has happened.
I don't know if there's been a rollout yet. There's been a little bit of turbulence going on. But the announcement was that actually there already is a program where you can get a loan, a low interest loan, like 2%, for I think it was $40,000, and now they were going to double that to $80,000,
Right.
which is a significant for these projects. And I believe it's also supposed to be like you could do it after the fact, up to a certain point. So,
okay.
So that will really help.
Refinance your.
Yeah, that'll really help with the financing of these. The city of different municipalities also have programs where if you're going to commit to a certain level of affordability, then they'll offer like a grant or I forget what the word is, a loan that'll get like waived over time.
Right.
So Hamilton does that with a $25,000 incentive, but I don't know anyone who's actually gone through that program yet. You do have to commit to certain lower rents and stuff as a result.
For a period of time?
For a period of time,
Right,
yeah.
I have a client who bought a property, and they had a similar thing where there was a large amount that was granted to the property for increasing density. I don't know if it was affordability, but just density. And over time, that amount drops off, right? Every year, maybe $5 or $10,000 drops off the amount, and to the point where eventually it will be paid off, right? Unless you sell the property, then you got to pay it off.
Yeah,
but
right.
similar kind of idea. So that's interesting.
Yep. So there's a few. And the other grant program that is out there is for energy incentives. Don't know how long it's going to last. But that's more for renovations. But if you were building an ADU in your house and you wanted to upgrade some of your HVAC or windows or such at the same time, then you could do that. So it's kind of helping pay for those upgrades.
Oh, okay. So kind of like the energy.
Greener Homes Grant.
Yeah, Greener Homes Grant.
Does INVIZIJ
Right,
Architects have any grants?
But like our goal is to create as many affordable homes as we can. I got to hit that 10,000 goal somehow. So as a result, like, happy to help look at all different options that are out there. Some of the other options could be looking at like prefabricated wall panels. So
To
for
reduce cost.
reduce costs, yeah. So there's a few different companies out there that are like, that's their objective, is to create horrible housing, and doing this prefab is part of that. So and there's also some other companies that are doing like full modular, where they'll just like plop it onto your site. That depends on your access and how having a big crane kind of takes away all the efficiency of that.
Does that take out the need for an architect to get involved, or like these things are pre-designed?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, if they're an Ontario company, then they'd have an Ontario stamp. So, yeah.
Are those? Are they any more affordable than actually building one right now? Like building from scratch? I've heard people do some cost comparisons, and there really wasn't a huge difference. This is a little while ago.
Yeah, like some of the numbers that I do see from these companies are pretty surprisingly competitive. So I would say there are efficiencies that you could find in these factories. So, one thing I'd like to share is I created a website, actually 2 websites.
All right.
So the one is the Facebook group that you were referring to. And that is kind of an open source community of over 3,000 people now.
What's it called again?
It's called
Laneway Suites and ADUs in Hamilton.
That's what it's called. Yeah. I had to change it a couple times over
Okay.
as the definitions of this have changed. So
you're like a hero.
Yeah. So that is a really fantastic active group that if someone has a question about a site or a program or they're just getting into this, other people will answer, and it's just a very positive community for that. They'll also share their projects like you've done, and so it's just a helpful community for people who have done a bunch
maybe
of
on
these.
behalf of that community, I'm going to say thank you for starting it,
Yeah.
keeping it running,
Yeah.
and advocating for a lot of these things too,
Yeah,
and like
so-
keeping
so
tabs on
glad.
the city, and
Yeah, I try to share what I can about like policy things, and
some of that seems kind of dry sometimes, but that makes a big difference, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And what's
then,
the other one?
Yeah, the other one is a website that I created kind of because of that, called sweetspot.ca.
Okay.
So that's sweet like SUITE.
We'll link to
dash
these.
spot, yeah.
We'll link to
And the reason I created that is it's also open source. It's not really for any company or person, but I wanted to put kind of where all these different organizations are. Like, here's their contact info. Here's maybe a little bit about what they do. Here's a link to the bylaws, because the city's site is still not super clear. So it's just kind of an easy place to go to get all the pertinent information that you need.
Okay, we will link to that for sure.
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. And then, I also I'm hoping to have more case studies. It's hard to get everyone to do case studies. You should get yours on there.
Yeah,
So,
hey, we'll do a case study.
yeah, just so people can see, like, this is our lot, this is how much it costs, this is how long it took, so that you can take away the scariness from people who have never been a developer before.
Yeah.
Unless it actually costs a lot of money, then you'll increase the scariness.
Yeah.
This is how much it costs. Whoa!
Wow. Yeah. One, I don't know if this is helpful to your listeners, but Graham and I kind of developed this metric for looking at the cost of a property or a development like this, and then what kind of rent you need in order to have it at least break even.
Yeah.
And right now we have like a multiplier of 150 times your monthly rent. I know all different people have different multipliers like this, right? But if your rent is $1,000, then it would need to cost around $150,000 at the current lending rates to have it make sense. Could be, different ratio if you think the rates are going to keep going down. Sure hope they are. But that might help people too if they're thinking like, if I can renovate my basement for $100,000, then the rent would be like $1,000, and then I'd be,
Just do the quick math in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Handy to have those little tools.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we use for things, and sometimes the ratio doesn't work out quite right now, but it will, or you anticipate that it will in the future.
And that also depends on your objectives, right? Like
That's
if you
right.
have an existing house with a basement that you're not really using,
Yeah.
and you have some capital that you could, improve your whole house, then do you really need to account for that? Yeah, necessarily, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't include like your capital improvement to the property, right? This is just like being able to cover your increased lending rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. So what is the, if someone's looking to do a large affordable housing unit they can go to, is it INVIZIJ?
INVIZIJ.ca.
.ca. So INVIZIJ.ca. It's the phonetic version. And,
Yeah, we work all over Ontario.
okay. Right. And then if they're looking for laneways and, or laneway suites or ADUs, check out the Facebook group or
the best place, yeah.
sweetspot.ca as well.
That's
coming up.
right, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much for being on with us, Emma. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
And to our listeners, thanks for listening with us today. And until next time,
Steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To learn more about the show, head on over to twostewards.ca and explore our free resources. To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We will see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.
Nailed it.